I woke up to the smell of coffee drifting through the kitchen, the sun just starting to creep in through the blinds. Same routine as always. I fed the dog, opened the laptop, and started sorting through client files, probate cases mostly, old estates, unclaimed inheritances. Some folks find it boring. I find peace in structure. I'm 42, the youngest of 3 sisters, married to Vernon Delmar, a man nearly 2 decades older than me. A name that once carried weight in Georgia's legal circles, now more of a ghost presence in the house we shared. That morning felt ordinary, until it wasn't. A notification pinged on my phone. I glanced down, still halfway through organizing birth records for a client in North Carolina. My bank app showed a transfer, $500,000. From Vernon's private account, straight into mine. I froze. He didn't do that, not without saying something. Vernon was meticulous, almost annoyingly so. Every dollar had a line item. Every conversation had a purpose. This was reckless. And that wasn't Vernon. My thumb hovered over the phone, heart pounding. A mistake? A gift? A warning? I sat there, staring at the screen, long after the coffee had gone cold. He was supposed to be in Charleston on business. I'd ask him when he got back. He'd laugh and explain it all away. He had to. Later that afternoon, I was rinsing dishes, trying to shake the unease from my chest. That's when the call came in. Vernon's assistant, Jenna. Her voice shook as she asked if I was sitting down. There was an incident, she began. I gripped the sink tighter. He'd collapsed at dinner, she said. Private meeting at a friend's estate. Paramedics came, did what they could. Nothing worked. Madeline, he's gone. The plate slipped from my hand and shattered in the sink. But the sound was distant, like it happened in someone else's kitchen. The only thing louder than the silence was the sound of my own heartbeat. Gone? I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Jenna's voice turned into static. $500,000 in my account. And now this? I replayed our last phone call in my mind, trying to find something I missed. He was calm, distant, but then again, Vernon often was. That day, though, there was something in his tone, a softness. He told me, "You need to trust yourself more, Maddie." At the time, I'd smiled. Thought it was a rare moment of affection. But now? It echoed differently, like it was meant to prepare me. Did he know something? Was he afraid? Why didn't I ask more questions? Why did I let the conversation end? When news of Vernon's death hit, my sisters were on the first flight out. Charlotte walked in like a prosecutor ready to cross-examine. Marcia, as usual, carried that smug little smile, the kind that says, "I told you so," without ever saying it. They hugged me, yes. But coldly, like condolences were a script they barely rehearsed. When I mentioned the $500,000, their expressions shifted, not to surprise, but something uglier. Charlotte tilted her head. He must have felt guilty, she said. Or maybe he had a mistress he was trying to cover up. Marcia didn't even bother to hide the contempt. You were the second wife, Madeline. Let's not rewrite history. That hurt. More than I expected. I'd been with Vernon for 9 years. Loved him in my own steady, careful way. But to them, I'd always be the outsider. The convenient substitute. I didn't argue, but I didn't forget. The next morning, Vernon's lawyer called. I knew his voice, crisp, rehearsed, the kind of man who delivered bad news like he was reading weather reports. There's been a change, he said. You're expected at the reading of the will. 72 hours from now. Change? I asked. He updated the will. Last month. Quietly. Even he sounded unsettled. Vernon never did anything quietly. I hung up, chest tightening. Was the $500,000 a payout? A replacement for something I was cut out of? My thoughts spiraled. I needed answers, and not the kind buried in legal paperwork. I pulled out the file boxes Vernon kept in his study, dusty, labeled in that neat block handwriting. Then came the photos, voice notes, password-protected folders on his old tablet. And then the drawer, locked. And a voicemail, recently deleted. Recovered with a little digging. Static followed by Vernon's voice, clipped and urgent. If anything happens, check the safe. It's all there. The safe? I'd never seen one. Every memory suddenly turned suspect. Every word he'd spoken now held weight I hadn't seen before. I whispered into the still room, "What were you preparing me for, Vernon?" That night, as I reached for the key to the locked drawer, I heard footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate. I was supposed to be alone. The rain started as I pulled into the parking lot, just a light drizzle, but enough to make the streets shimmer. Downtown felt heavier that morning, steel, glass, and silence. I parked, grabbed my umbrella, and walked alone toward the tall building where Vernon's lawyer had his office. No one met me at the door. No arms around me, just the damp air and my own thoughts. Mr. Ashford greeted me with that carefully practiced sympathy only lawyers perfect. "Lee," he said, nodding with weight. "Thank you for coming." I nodded back, not trusting my voice. Inside, the conference room was dim, lined with dark wood, leather chairs, and the smell of old paper. Charlotte and Marcia were already there, sitting like statues. Their eyes tracked me, sharp and appraising. No hugs. No, "How are you?" Just silence and calculation. Mr. Ashford stood at the head of the table. "Vernon updated his will last month," he said. "It is final, binding, and will be honored as written." I swallowed hard. My hands tightened around the umbrella handle as if it could anchor me. This was it. Whatever Vernon had decided, whatever truth he'd buried, was about to be unearthed. Ashford opened the manila folder. His voice dropped slightly. Vernon's words came through flat but precise. Formal. Cold, even. "To Lee," he read, "I leave clarity and peace, and this fund to begin again." Clarity and peace. That was Vernon's version of sentiment. The lawyer continued, "The $500,000 was a living trust, separate from the estate." I felt my jaw tighten. I hadn't expected more, but I hadn't expected less either. Then the next part came. "The remainder of Vernon Delmar's assets," Ashford said, "are hereby transferred to the Delmar Foundation for Civil Rights and Legal Equity." Charlotte gasped. Her name hadn't been mentioned. Neither had Marcia's. Not a cent. Not even a line. "And the trustees?" Marcia asked, voice too calm. "External. From Vernon's law network. No family members involved," Ashford replied. I blinked. My name wasn't there either, just as he said. I was listed only as a temporary beneficiary. Not permanent. Not protected. Charlotte stood abruptly. "This is a joke," she snapped. He was manipulated. Ashford stayed composed. There was no coercion. Vernon made these changes independently. "The documents are sound." "He wasn't sound," Marcia hissed. "You expect us to believe he was lucid? Last month? After what he was going through?" I watched them unravel, word by word. "You seduced him," Charlotte spat at me. "You waited until he was old and weak and then took what you could." I didn't flinch. "You didn't even visit him," I said. "You only showed up when there was money to be read." Marcia leaned back. "None of this will stand. We'll challenge it. We'll go public." Mr. Ashford gently cleared his throat. "You're welcome to try. But you should know it won't be easy. And it won't be private." Later, as I stepped out into the now steady rain, I felt no comfort. I wasn't just Vernon's widow now. I was the villain in someone else's story. The next morning, my name was on a blog. Big, bold headline. "Young widow gets $500,000 as millionaire dies mysteriously." The article dripped with innuendo, tensions in the marriage, estranged daughters, a rushed will. Every sentence made it worse. The comments came like knives. "She probably poisoned him. Gold digger. I hope they sue her into the ground." I called Charlotte. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. Just asked, "Why?" She laughed. "Don't act surprised, Lee. You were always a phase to him. Now you're over." The screen blurred. My hands shook, not from fear, but rage. At the grocery store, people whispered. At the mailbox, a neighbor wouldn't meet my eyes. I was being erased, in real time. That night, back home, I dug through the living room drawers, trying to find something that made sense. I remembered the safe, locked drawer in his office. I hadn't touched it. Not yet. Then I found Vernon's old notebook, curled pages, his handwriting like little fences on the paper. One page was dated, just 3 weeks ago. "Lee, trust the archive. It holds everything they feared." I stared at the words for a long time. Everything they feared. I knew what he meant. The drawer. I walked to the office. Every step felt heavier. I hadn't opened it 2 nights ago. I'd been too wrecked. But now? I needed to. I opened the side table, pulled out the drawer key Vernon kept behind an old chess set. He said once it was just habit, not secrecy. I believed him then. Not anymore. The key slid in, stiff from time. Click. Inside, a USB, a folded legal doc, and a printed photo. The picture was old. Vernon, me, and Charlotte. Her face, cold, unsmiling, standing just a bit too close to Vernon. Her hand barely touching his elbow, like a claim. On the back, Vernon had written in ink, "This is where the truth begins." The morning sun didn't soften what was coming. I stood outside the City Hall press room, hand on the doorknob, steadying my breath. I wore the navy wrap dress Vernon once said made me look like I meant business. I didn't wear it to impress anyone today, I wore it like a flag. A reminder. Inside, the noise swallowed me. Cameras clicked like insects. Reporters pressed forward, calling my name like it belonged to them. I didn't flinch. I moved through them, careful, upright, not giving them more than a glance. Charlotte was already there, holding court. She kissed Marcia on the cheek, hugged Diane, then turned to me. Her nod was barely more than a blink. I may as well have been an intern bringing coffee. I looked toward the podium. A new banner draped across the front, Stroud Delmar Legacy Trust. My name wasn't there. It was never going to be, was it? Then the family lawyer took the mic. Calm, professional, like this was a formality. Ms. Lysandra Carraway, he said, has been deemed ineligible as heir under the latest amendment to the estate. The words struck sharp. I stood still. My chest tightened, but I didn't let it show. Not yet. Charlotte stepped forward, voice smooth. This is about stewardship, she said. Not love. My father's legacy must be protected. Questions fired from the press like gunshots. Was the $500,000 a payoff? Did she pressure him into signing? Is there a signed copy at all? I saw Marcia pass a phone to a nearby journalist. The screen lit up with a photo, me, outside Garrick's office, visibly upset. My hand clutched my forehead. No caption needed. They'd already written the story. Did she seduce the estate attorney? Was there a secret agreement? My face burned. I could feel the eyes. I closed my eyes for half a breath and heard Maya Angelou in my head. When they say you can't, show them you already are. I raised my hand, quieting the room without a word. Where is the signed amendment? I asked. The one Vernon supposedly left? A long silence followed. The lawyer looked at Charlotte. She didn't blink. It's under internal review, he finally said. Charlotte offered a practiced smile. Not everything is for public consumption. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I turned and walked out. Backstage was quieter, but no less tense. As I stepped into the hallway, I caught Quentin's voice behind a partially closed door. She must be stopped, he hissed. If she talks, the whole board collapses. I froze. So it wasn't just about the money. A young reporter trailed behind me, notebook in hand. Miss Carraway, she asked gently, do you feel safe? I gave her the smile I'd been practicing all morning. Safe's not something I expect. Just something I carry. I opened my purse, touched the scarf Vernon gave me that last Christmas. I'd almost left it behind this morning. I was glad I didn't. I folded it, carefully, and placed it back inside like a talisman. By early afternoon, the headlines were everywhere. Young widow accused of scheme. $500,000 for silence? My image, blurred but unmistakable, circulated in a loop, voice dubbed over, context stripped. They didn't want facts. They wanted drama. My inbox flooded. So did my voicemail. And the comments, vicious. Gold digger. Should have seen it coming. Did he know what she was? I sat at the kitchen table, watching it all unfold on my laptop. My sisters looked proud of themselves in every frame. I closed the screen. I stood up. Let them spin the story. I would write the ending. That night, back home, I bolted the front door and walked straight to my bedroom. From my purse, I pulled out the USB drive Vernon had left hidden. I plugged it in. There it was, his private archive. Legal drafts, email threads, transfer notices. A pattern began to emerge. Quiet but deliberate. He hadn't cut me out. He had hidden something. There was a name, Archive 7. Shell accounts, family properties, coded references. All pointing to something he hadn't trusted the others with. And now it was in my hands. I opened my phone and texted Sterling, it's time. A storm had started outside. Rain beat the windows like fists. But inside, I felt strangely still. You built this on silence, I whispered into the dark. I'll break it with truth. Later, as the storm gave way to stillness, I stepped onto the veranda. The sky was a bruise-colored streak of clouds. I stared out, thinking of Garrick, the way he used to say, legacies matter more than estates. I walked back inside, opened Vernon's desk, and locked away the key to the drawer holding the last original documents. Above the door hung the family crest. I stared at it without blinking. Your legacy lives, I whispered. But so does mine. My phone buzzed, calendar alert. The foundation gala, 3 days. I grabbed the scarf, wrapped it around my wrist, and walked inside. It had been 2 quiet days since I spoke with Rhonda, and my house had turned into something like a command post. Files scattered, coffee going cold, documents pulled from corners I hadn't opened in years. Then, just as I was about to settle back into reviewing a scanned donor log, the doorbell rang. Jordan. I hadn't seen that boy in months, Malik's former assistant, the one who always stood too straight and watched too much. He looked thinner, darker around the eyes, like truth had been weighing heavy on him. I ain't got long, he said, stepping in without waiting for my yes. His hand shook as he pulled out a worn leather folder, handed it to me like it was burning in his hands. I'm done, he whispered. I'm out. It's too dirty now. They turning on each other, Trey. And they using your name like it's insurance. I opened the folder. USB drive inside. Paperwork. Spreadsheet printouts. A string of emails, names blacked out, but not all the way. They've been moving funds, he said, voice cracking. Grants. Donations. That LTF Legacy Trust, it's just paper. But it's moving real money. He leaned close like the walls might have ears. One of the grants, Youth Tech Program, they pulled $73,000 and rerouted it. Used your name as oversight chair. I stared at him. You know what that makes you look like, right? He added. Like the one who signed off. Jordan stepped back. Please don't say I came here. I'm scared, man. They got folks watching everybody. He left without touching anything else. I locked the door, then stood there a long time before even breathing proper again. That night I didn't sleep. I went through every folder, every document. On that USB, I saw my name pasted beside transactions I never approved, nonprofits I never knew, shell companies built with initials that looked like honor but smelled like cover-up. I hadn't just been erased. I was being used as a shield for something bigger. Something foul. Next morning, I drove down to First Grace. My wife used to work there part-time, handling records, writing donation thank yous by hand. Pastor Maureen met me with that same soft voice she always carried at funerals. You look tired, Trey. I am, I told her. And I'm not just here for prayer. She led me into the back room, where they kept the old archives. Boxes on boxes. I found what I needed. The original incorporation documents, my name, my wife's handwriting on the notary form, back when the ink was honest. Then we found another document. One dated 3 years ago, the week I had that minor stroke. It said board control shifted. Malik and his wife, Rachel, now had override authority. My signature sat there, but it wasn't mine. Maureen stared at the page, her hands trembling. Trey, they wrote you out while you were healing. I nodded once. Didn't say a word for a long time. Back home, I called Rhonda. It's time, I said. This ain't just moral. It's legal now. I want your firm on this. We move quiet or loud? She asked. Loud, I said. They tarnished me out in the open. They gone, watch me rebuild in the same light. That night, I sat with Jovel's photo. That smile of hers, still tilted just enough to make me pause. I touched the frame and whispered, they forgot you built this too. I remembered my grandfather's words. He used to say it like a warning and a prayer. A man's name is all he's got when his bones start to fail. My body might be slower now. But my name? That's something I still know how to fight for. The spreadsheet sat open, blinking back at me like it knew. I stared at the numbers, the transactions Vernon and I worked on together last fall. I remembered the long nights, him drawing diagrams on a napkin, me building formulas until my eyes ached. That work had built something. And now a line jumped out. Asset transfer, Delmar Enterprises, right pointing arrow Stroud Holdings. It carried my digital signature, but I hadn't signed a thing. My name, forged, filed just last week. I closed my eyes and leaned back, feeling the weight shift inside me. Something quiet snapped. The plaque on the wall, Chief Financial Officer, Lee Carraway, meant nothing if they could erase me without blinking. This wasn't negligence. This was deliberate, calculated, the kind of move you make when you want someone gone but still need to smile in public. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there with my fingertips pressed against the oak desk Vernon picked out. And I knew, I was in the middle of a game I never agreed to play, but I was damn well going to finish it. A knock on the door came soft, then purposeful. Charlotte's voice followed. Family meeting. Just 10 minutes, Lee. I followed her down the hallway into the conference room. Quentin was already seated. There was a lawyer at the end of the table, one I recognized. Used to work with Vernon back in the day. The air felt like it was waiting to hold its breath. A folder was slid across to me. Settlement proposal, read the label. Charlotte folded her hands neatly in her lap. We know this has been emotional for you. Vernon's passing, the spotlight, but we're offering you a clean exit. 500,000, tax-free. You deserve peace. Quentin added without blinking, this isn't personal. It's about what's best for everyone. We're trying to preserve the legacy. I tilted my head. By erasing the woman who built half of it? The lawyer didn't flinch. Charlotte smiled tightly. You can fight this, Lee, or you can leave with dignity. I didn't open the folder. Didn't have to. It was a bribe. A glossy, legal, signature-wrapped bribe. I stared at the polished wood of the table and said flatly, I'm not for sale. I stepped out of the room, excused myself to the restroom, and locked the door behind me. Leaning on the sink, I stared at the mirror. I didn't see the woman who cried into casseroles after the funeral. I saw someone I hadn't fully met yet. The one who outlasted nights with Vernon's doubts, the one who moved decimal points that saved them millions. The quote popped into my head uninvited, Maya Angelou, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Well, they just showed me. I walked back into the room, folder still unopened, and dropped it gently on the table. I'm not stepping aside, not now, not ever. Charlotte's eyes flicked to Quentin, then back to me. Calculating. War declared. Quietly, but undeniably. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. I had clarity. I connected Vernon's flash drive to my laptop and opened folder after folder. Meeting minutes, financial trails, names moved around like chess pieces. And then, the missing video files, the edited tribute and the originals, my face and voice stripped out like I'd never existed. I opened a new recording. Spoke directly into the camera. Tonight, I become the author of my own story. I clicked send on a message to Sterling, activate plan B tomorrow. Outside, the rain came hard, drumming against the windows like it had something to say. I stared at the scarf, Rowan's gift from a charity event years ago, now folded beside my laptop. I touched it gently. Then I closed the laptop, turned off the light, and lay in bed. Not tossing, not turning, just still. The kind of still that comes with resolve. At sunrise, my phone buzzed. Headline after headline. Delmar widow rejects settlement offer. I made coffee. Strong. Walked out to the veranda and watched the clouds settle into the Georgia horizon. Mug in hand, I read Charlotte's text, optics matter. I sent back 2 words, so do truths. I didn't wait for a reply. I grabbed my keys and drove past the gala venue. Lights were being strung, staff moving like ants, building the facade. Spanish moss swayed over tents that hadn't seen a guest yet. I rolled down the window and stared. You're building the stage, I said under my breath. But I'm bringing the rewrite. Evening came quickly. I dressed deliberately. Simple black. No jewelry. The scarf around my neck, not just fabric, but reminder. Memory. And maybe armor. At the entrance, the valet handed me the program. I flipped through casually. No mention of me. Not in the acknowledgements. Not even a courtesy footnote. I smiled. Not because I liked it. Because it confirmed what I already knew. They didn't think I'd show up. Let alone walk in holding a flash drive that could burn it all down. I gripped my clutch a little tighter. That tiny piece of plastic carried more weight than any diamond ever could. The lights inside were warm, flickering. Conversations hummed. But I didn't hear them. I heard the quiet inside me, still. Certain. The audience didn't know it yet. But the finale wasn't theirs to write. I stepped into the ballroom like I belonged there, because I did. The oak-paneled walls caught the flicker of chandelier light, casting soft glows across polished shoes and satin dresses. Every corner buzzed with conversation, clinking glasses, and half-hearted laughter. My name tag read simply, Lee Carraway. No title, no affiliation, nothing that hinted at the years I'd poured into this foundation. At the registration desk, they handed me a program. I didn't even look before I knew. My name wasn't on the honorary section again. The ink had skipped me, as if I was a smudge on their polished image. Cressida came running through the crowd in her flower girl dress, hair curled just the way she liked. She hugged my legs, then looked up and mouthed, "They forgot again." I crouched beside her, smoothing the ribbon on her dress. "Maybe I'll remind them," I said quietly. As we rose, a voice boomed over the mic. "Lee Carraway, please join us on stage to present the check to our Children's Scholarship Fund." The cameras turned toward me. I smiled, walked up, and handed off a check I didn't sign. But I felt something building inside, bigger than me, louder than this polished silence. Something ready to speak. After stepping down from the stage, I walked with Cressida toward the gallery. Photographs of Vernon lined the walls, each one curated with care: dinners, donations, ribbon cuttings. I paused at a photo of the three of us, Vernon, Rowan, and me at a charity dinner in 2017. My hand had been on his arm. Rowan's smile was strained. Cressida squinted at the plaque below it. "Aunt Lee," she said, her voice small but clear, "why isn't your name on the photo?" Her words dropped like a glass shattering in a church. I looked around. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. Eyes flicked between me and the photo. I put my arm around her and held her close. I looked down at her again and whispered, "Thanks for asking." That was it. The dam broke. I turned, walked to the podium uninvited. The host stuttered something about the next segment, but I raised my hand. "I'm Lee Carraway," I said, voice steady. "I helped build this foundation. The programs, the numbers, the strategies, what you call legacy, I helped shape it." The room froze. Cameras rolled. I heard Rowan shift in her chair, her posture stiff as bone. I tapped the small remote in my hand. Behind me, the screen flashed a board meeting slide, my name in the minutes. Dates. Time-stamped contributions. Another click revealed a file. Rowan's signature, transferring assets out of my name a week ago. Someone decided my presence was inconvenient, I said, but I won't be erased. My mother's face, stone still. Quentin, jaw tight. Charlotte, arms folded, eyes narrow. "I didn't come here for a fight," I said. "But I won't walk away from one either." The screen went black. I stepped down. Backstage, the energy was boiling. Quentin paced like a lion trapped in a cage. Sterling stood against the far wall, arms crossed, nodding. Charlotte barreled past, hissing as she brushed my shoulder. "You just lit a match on everything." I looked her in the eye. Maybe, but silence burns too. Applause rippled from the ballroom. It sounded confused, then determined, like some of them weren't clapping for the foundation anymore. Like maybe they were clapping for truth. I touched the scarf around my neck. Not adjusting it, claiming it. I stepped out to the veranda. The night air was thick, humid, full of the smell of cut grass and something older, like oak and memory. I opened my clutch and pulled out the flash drive. It glinted under the porch light. "This is the pause before the shift," I murmured, looking at the sky. I reviewed my plan, Sterling's legal team already on alert. The press waiting for confirmation. I'd hit send on the press release tomorrow morning. I felt calm, grounded. From the trees, a single cicada sang. Back inside, the gala was louder. Sharper. People were whispering, gesturing, wondering. I stepped back into the ballroom, this time walking like I owned it. Because now, I did. I took the stage again, no announcement. No cue. "Tonight," I said clearly, "you'll see the story they didn't want told." I tapped the projector again. The screen came alive with the unedited tribute video, my image, my voice, my place beside Vernon, as it always had been. The crowd watched in silence. I didn't. I walked off the stage, past the front row, past my mother, past Rowan. I wasn't leaving. I was arriving. I woke to my phone vibrating on the nightstand, nonstop. 37 unread texts. 12 missed calls. One voicemail from Sterling, it aired. I sat up, heart thumping harder than it should have after last night. The television was already on, left playing in the background from when I got in. There it was, my face, right next to Vernon's. The headline, "Wife of Late Philanthropist Speaks Out." I walked to the kitchen, poured coffee I didn't remember setting up, and stared at the screen. Amanda Wynne, one of the early board members, sat across from a news anchor. She said Lee carried more weight than any of us. We just let her disappear. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired, honest. I took a long breath. My name, finally, publicly, was being tied to truth, not gossip, not pity. Just truth. I whispered, finally. By mid-morning, the world outside had changed. Paparazzi leaned on the gate like vultures waiting for movement. I peeked through the curtains and caught two neighbors whispering by the hedges. Savannah hadn't felt this stirred up in years. My phone didn't stop buzzing. Local reporters, cable networks, national morning shows, all of them wanting interviews. Offers came with statements like, "We'd love your voice in this moment," and, "You represent something bigger now." I ignored most of them. Charlotte sent a single message, "Congratulations. You win the internet." I almost laughed. Almost. But I didn't reply. Some silences speak for themselves. Then my mother called. Her voice, wobbly, proud, hesitant. "Your father. He would have said you got that fire from me." And for a split second, I let that land. By noon, I had made my choice, one interview. WGN. Local. The same crew who'd covered Vernon's scholarship drives. Small-town trust still meant something. In the studio, they powdered my cheeks and clipped a mic to my collar. I wore a simple navy blazer. My scarf was tucked into the neckline, a quiet flag I refused to lower. I looked straight into the camera when they started. "I disappeared in plain sight," I said. "They told me silence was noble. That grace meant not making a scene. But grace without voice is erasure." The anchor asked, "What do you want next?" "Ownership," I said, "and policy change. No more invisible architects behind public legacies." The room was quiet after the shoot. Not awkward, just full. Like people were realizing something they couldn't unsee. That afternoon, my inbox pinged. Two names I hadn't thought about in years, Claire and Jonah, junior execs from Del Mar's finance wing. Their message was short. "We have documentation." Attached were files, meeting minutes, proxy votes, proof I'd been cut out methodically, months before Vernon's death. Sterling responded instantly with a legal update, motion to freeze asset transfer, filed and confirmed. I walked back to my office, where a photo of Vernon and me from our launch gala still sat in a silver frame. I stared at it. "I won't rewrite history," I whispered. "But I will finish it right." Near sundown, while I was reviewing the new evidence, my email dinged with a press statement from Rowan. Her tone, righteous. Her message, defensive. "We grieve and dispute the hurtful revisionist narrative," she wrote. She included photos, me at a resort, walking a beach alone, sipping wine on a hotel balcony. The implication was clear. I'd misused Vernon's funds. Except I hadn't. Every trip, every bill, paid for by me. I kept the receipts. I always kept the receipts. Sterling called. "Let this push them," he said. "Let it go to court. That's where we shine." I nodded, already pulling folders from a cabinet, flipping through emails, scanning for dates and cross-matching payments. "They thought I wouldn't keep proof," I muttered. "They forgot who built the ledger." That night, I sat down in front of my laptop and recorded a short video. "You may not know me," I said, "but you know women like me. The ones who built it, held it together, and got written out of the story." I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Within hours, the video spread. Advocacy groups shared it, women's networks. A few celebrities even reposted it with captions like, "About time." Just before bed, a courier arrived. In his hand, an envelope with my name scrawled in pen. Inside was a letter, handwritten, from Marcus Talley, Vernon's old mentor. "Lee, Vernon often said he trusted only you to finish what he started. I do, too." I placed the letter beside my laptop. "Tomorrow, we begin formal filings." But tonight, I exhaled, not from relief. From resolve. I sat in the waiting room at Turner & Cray LLP, hands folded over my lap, feeling the weight of every mile traveled to reach this moment. Sterling stepped out, nodding quietly, then handed me a white envelope sealed with wax. It's labeled, for Lee, only if she fought. I stared at it for a second. I knew that handwriting. Vernon's. Inside was a USB drive and a note, "One truth deserves another." The courtroom part was surprisingly smooth. Rowan had officially been removed as executor. The judge acknowledged my co-leadership over Del Mar's foundation. No fanfare, no spectacle. Just a line in a legal file that corrected years of being left out. As we walked out, Sterling slowed his step beside me. "He did love you. This proves it." I didn't answer, but I felt it. Not just in the envelope in my purse. In the quiet inside my chest. That afternoon, back in my studio, I closed the blinds and locked the door. I sat at my old drafting desk, the same one where Vernon and I mapped out our first grant cycles on paper scraps. I plugged in the USB. The audio clicked to life. "If you're hearing this, you didn't give up," Vernon said. His voice was older than I remembered, gravelly, tired, but steady. "I always knew you were the stronger one. I didn't say it enough. I didn't act like it enough. But I saw it." He admitted knowing Rowan had plans, resentments. That he tried to sidestep it by transferring money, hoping it would give me room to build something without the chains. "The $500,000, he said, wasn't to buy silence. It was my permission to go louder. Use it to fix what I couldn't. Not just my name, but the system we let hurt you." I leaned forward, forehead against the desk, tears finally moving. Not because he redeemed himself, but because he tried. The next day, I drove to Rowan's house without calling. She opened the door wearing her usual mask of elegance, but the shock on her face cracked it. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I just wanted to say, it's done. You don't have to keep swinging." She crossed her arms. "And I suppose now you want me to grovel." "No," I replied. "I don't need anything from you. I just wanted to say I'm not your enemy. I never was." She didn't respond, but her silence, for once, wasn't power. It was avoidance. As I turned to leave, I paused. "You were always more afraid of being second than I ever was of being invisible." That stuck. Later that week, we held a public event at Vernon's Memorial Garden. Nothing grand, just a few dozen people. Old friends, former partners, a couple anonymous donors who came quietly, eyes lowered, but hearts wide open. I stood under the oak tree Vernon had planted years ago and spoke without notes. "Legacy isn't a statue," I said. "It's what we move forward. What we pass on with both hands, not just our names." We unveiled a stone bench. The plaque read, "To Vernon, who tried. To Lee, who finished." Applause broke out. Some people cried. I didn't. I just let myself breathe, finally, without holding back. Charlotte hugged me hard. "You're exactly where you belong," she whispered. That night, I returned home and found dozens of letters on my doorstep. Women across the country. Stories of being dismissed, erased, underestimated. Each one handwritten, real. One stood out. A formal invitation from Stanford Women in Business. Keynote speaker. I said yes. I began sketching my speech on a legal pad. Title: The Power of Staying. The scarf, my quiet banner through every fight, was now framed beside Vernon's last letter. My studio wasn't just mine anymore. It was a legacy in motion. And then, on a Sunday morning, I did something I hadn't done in a decade. I visited my father's grave. I read Vernon's letter aloud, every line, letting my father's memory hear what kind of man his daughter had survived, forgiven, and grown through. "They didn't break me," I said, laying the USB under the headstone. There was nothing more to carry. I stood in the quiet for a while, then walked back toward my car. The sky wasn't just clear. It was open. I pulled out my phone and texted Sterling, "Let's register the foundation next week." New name, new path, same fire.